Hi, everyone. Welcome to Dear BAMf, the show for PR and marketing pros like you. Hosted by Beck Bamberger of BAM. BAM is a communications agency that believes stories move the world. We move stories forward for technology-driven brands that challenge, change, and create entire industries. Today, on the Dear BAMf podcast, we're talking with Victoria Griffin, Communications Manager at Rhia Ventures. Victoria believes that people matter and that listening to every voice is important. She develops business strategies and relationships using her entrepreneurial spirit. Let's dive in.
Welcome, everyone. This is Dear BAMf, the podcast for all your comms marketing quandaries and questions. We try to answer pretty much everything that gets thrown our way with our wonderful guests that we always have here. My name is Beck Bamberger. I run BAM, which is an agency that works with all venture-backed technology companies. And then I'm also a founder of One Pitch, which is a platform to help publicists reach journalists in a way more efficient manner, because we need some efficiency these days with all the emails flying by with pitches. With me today, so excited, Victoria Griffith. She's the communication manager as well as the executive producer of a podcast that Rhia Ventures has up in San Francisco. Welcome, Ms. Victoria.
Thank you, Beck. Thank you for having me.
Yeah, you also do a podcast, so you know the drill with all this.
Yes, I do.
Excellent. You're an old hand with it, so perfect. Well, first off, for folks who don't necessarily know about this particular venture fund, what could you tell us?
So Rhia Ventures is a social impact organization that houses a fund with an LLC. And we also have several other different programmatic areas. So our ultimate mission is to create a vibrant U.S. market for sexual, reproductive, and maternal health. But we really focus on why the market has gotten the way it is, which is based on systemic and structural racism. And we really focus on producing equitable outcomes for women of color, low-income women, and others directly affected by systemic inequities.
This is a big undertaking and one that will take quite a bit of time. I'm happy to hear with you guys in particular that it's such a core tenet and a mission for you. Versus some other funds who are like, hey, we're here to make money and see how that works. Really great founders. So I've always liked that about you guys. That is great. What are you most proud of accomplishing, would you say, in the last 12-ish or so months? But what is time anymore? It's a little bit of a blur right now, as you know.
Yeah, what is time?
Right? Mm-hmm.
Absolutely. I think one of the main things that I'm proud of accomplishing is actually the launching of our podcast.
Yeah.
Because with a fund or with, I think, any investment vehicle, tying it to impact and how it's directly affecting those that you are seeking to help can be hard to measure. And our podcast allows us to directly connect with the consumers at a level that we would not be able to connect with in our day-to-day, because we're working with companies and the companies are working with the consumers. We get to hear from the consumers themselves, talk about how they gotten to where they were or are, and how what we're doing affects them in their day-to-day.
Is there a favorite way you're telling stories right now among all these companies you have? You got a couple, definitely, that I like.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
One of our favorite ways is having a storyteller come on that has encountered a specific condition. I will use fibroids as an example. Our storyteller comes on, they speak about their direct experience with fibroids from beginning, middle, and end. And they also share within it the statistics and how they appear in the statistics.
Ooh, so backing it up with some data.
Yes, lots of data.
Yeah, that's compelling. It's so often, I'm glad you say that, because so often there's just a spewing of, 43% of people this, or there's 200,000 people who are affected by that. And it's like, those are numbers and those are like wide ranging. But for you to use a first person narrative and then expand it is so helpful.
Yes, we definitely want people to understand where they sit within the numbers, because by understanding that way, they can be a part of the conversations.
Yeah. Oh, I love it. Do you want to plug your podcast real quick?
Sure.
Yes.
Our podcast is PS Blossom. Anywhere you listen to podcasts is where you can find it. But specifically, I could say Anchor, Spotify, Apple, and I think the other one is Castbox. I might be butchering that.
That's okay. That's okay. Great.
Yeah.
Okay. Excellent. Everyone download.
And you can follow us on Instagram or Twitter under PS Blossom. That's PS_Blossom. But also we are on the Rhia Ventures website. And yeah, we're powered by Rhia.
There you go. Well, let's get into our questions, Victoria. We got some gnarly ones. Here we go. Dear BAMf. So my client is going to be on a national TV program and is going on set in New York City in 2 weeks. I've done everything to make sure this client is media trained and prepared. And indeed, she does a consistent job on phone interviews as well as on ones on Zoom, even live. My slight concern is that she'll be on set for the first time and might have nerves kick in, which she has said jokingly on our past call. What are some need to know about being on a set that I could perhaps pass along? I realize I can't practice with my client on a real actual set.
That's a really great question. And so I've worked on sets before and I've been on set myself as both talent and behind the scenes. And as talent, the number one thing is people are there to help you create the best product. Remembering that the team, the cast, everyone is there to help you create the best product. And your job is just to show up prepared. And there's a large part of trusting the process, but also once you get there, treat it like you would, I would say, any other event. Be mindful of all that's going on around you and find a place where you can sit and just breathe in and out and prep yourself for being, whether it's on camera or on stage, and trust the process. I think inherently most people want others to do the best that they can. And so trusting that is a large part of being on set. And it's going to be noisy. It's going to be loud. There are going to be a lot of people moving around. Honestly, I would say stay present. Being in that moment also gives you that energy, and it's like a boost that can help calm those nerves.
I love that. And it was mentioned at just the top of the show, you did come from a TV background. So that's such a great ad. I can say the number one thing from like a producer is I want my show to look good. I want it to be successful. I need everybody who's showing up to be a talking head, to be a wonderful talking head, and to be engaging and seem normal and not be freaking out and make my talent look good, to make my life also easier so that no one turns off, let's say, the channel at that time or doesn't skip the viewing of it and everything. So if you think of it from the mindset of like that producer who's sweating, programming live television every day, which I have been there as well, that's the objective. So calming yourself, but also just as what you just said, Victoria, like trusting the process. It's great. And it will be over also in no time at all, which is also great to know. You're not like, oh God, it's a TED Talk. I got to have 17 minutes of flawless speech memorized. It's like, no, it's a natural conversation. You know your talking points. I think also too, for this person, for this client, now you're kind of getting to varsity level in terms of media interviews, which is live television. So it's visual, it's audio, it's live. There's no redos. But also, at least this client has done other opportunities. I would never put a client as a first timer on a live TV segment. Ever, ever, ever. This you have worked towards. You got this.
Yes. And you make a really good point around people not being their first time interviewing. That can be intimidating for some, for that to be their first time, but you've practiced as much as you could beforehand. But also the phone interviews, like you said, are extremely helpful. And it's once you get out of your head and into your body,
I think you're going to be
it'll
good.
flow.
You're going to be good. You're going to be good. Next question we have here. Dear BAMf. It's a little meta that I'm asking this on Dear BAMf, but my founder is still asking me to set up a podcast with the launch of an event we're hosting in Q4. To her, it is just another channel for content and captures the thoughts of all the prominent guests we'll have on our annual affair. To me, this sounds like a lot of work that I'll have to manage, and I'm also concerned about the continuation of the podcast once we have the 15 or so guests on from that event. How do you think a podcast from a longevity standpoint as well as from the work ROI? It's perfect for you, Victoria.
So my first question around just to mirror something back to you, are you meeting a need? If you're setting up this podcast to launch an event, is there another way of launching this event that doesn't require you to set up a podcast that you can still have these 15 guests on? Maybe it's a panel, maybe it's one-on-one interviews. There are different ways to bring these different people on, but are you meeting a need for this podcast? What's the goal? Who are you helping? How are you making an impact with it? And what's the story? Because that's going to help with the longevity. Like if it's not helping meet a need, and if it doesn't tell people why they're there, they'll lose interest and they won't show up. They won't come back. If you don't know who your audience is, if your audience is specifically catered to these 15 people, who beyond them is your audience? Who beyond who is watching them or listening to them is your audience? And so thinking about those, because there's an expense that comes with podcasts, and there's the marketing piece for branding and the performance marketing piece. And so those come further, like they're part of it and they're part of the longevity. So my first question would be like, are you meeting a need? And once you realize what the need is that you're meeting, figuring out your goal and who you're seeking to help beyond that moment.
One consideration I'd add as well is to your point of the audience who it's serving, but also the form of the storytelling. Thinking, for example, if this is a panel of experts that you're bringing on, is their content best suited in verbal white paper form? And that should be the takeaway, because is it such a rich, dense topic that it is more of something you want to have more of a tangible, written word? Is it need to be super visual? So there's a visual element. Podcast then is not necessarily the best format for that. So I would consider and sit with it and go, okay, wait a second. Is this rich storytelling and you want to hear the person's voice to really convey? Is it back and forth like we're doing here on this show of like, oh, that's a good point, and let me, add into it. Is it back and forth? Is there commentary to it? Or is it better as a one-way narrative, or does it need to be visual, or does it need to be explained in excruciating detail that maybe doesn't need the format of a podcast? That is something I'd look at too.
Yeah. And that's such a great point. Like, what's the format? Because with a podcast, it's not a one and done, but it kind of is. Once you have the person on, they tell, you have a conversation, and there's a lot of work that goes into curating and creating these conversations. And so I like that point around what's the background and how are we going to just best set these individuals up to be great.
Miss Victoria, we've come to our last question for today. Let's see what we can solve here. Are you ready?
Yes.
Excellent. Dear BAMf, I am the internal head of brand and marketing at my fintech startup that is now a Series B sized company. We're about to launch a rebrand exercise, and I know this will take a few months. I'm concerned, particularly lately, about the inclusivity of our brand. It's easy as a consumer fintech company to show people of all different backgrounds and colors, but I'm a bit tired of seeing brands try too hard to display this, if that makes sense. I'm also a white male, so I'm the last person to consult on this, and I feel I may not be equipped to handle this rebrand. What is your advice?
This is a really great question. And I first want to just acknowledge your awareness around how easy it is to be performative as a brand around inclusivity, as well as acknowledging your race and your gender in this environment, in this forum. So my advice around that is to bring in someone who is equipped. I think that you raise a really good point around not being performative. And oftentimes I think that a company can forget that the audience can see it. They see it, they sense it. And it's a major downfall when you don't take that opportunity to explore how you can be more inclusive and how you can bring in people who can speak and bring in these audiences that are inclusive. So this is a great opportunity for you to be an ally and a co-collaborator, co-conspirator in this space. and partnering with, maybe it is a diverse and equity officer or a consultant that works in that area around inclusivity, and really having them come on and assess your brand and explore the ways in which you can bring in audiences of different backgrounds, different race, different experiences, who identify differently, and sitting down and having those conversations, because it's not just about bringing the audience. The internal work is just as much a part of building inclusivity into the brand as it is external. So if you're not doing the work internally, but you're showing that externally, people are going to call you out on it. So that is where I would start with sitting with how you can bring more individuals into the space that are doing this work already.
I love that answer, Victoria. And I'm also now speaking as the white person here, female, but white as well. This is a time where you bring other people. Yeah, you bring in other people who are experts, who have a thought, who are not you, basically, for coming from your context. This is one of the absolute benefits and exact reasons to have a variety of people working on something, to bring all the perspectives and the viewpoints, and to not then get into a trap or a situation where you go, oh, wow, that came out really wrong, because we had no one of any other lens to think about the ramifications or the implications or the meanings or all the things that is just a fact that we're in a global world with a lot of different things and different perspectives. So kudos to this person. Yay. Great to have that understanding. Way to go, Mel. And bring some other people on board and take a look. ASAP, I'd say too.
Yes, ASAP.
Yeah, ASAP. By the way, that's another reason then to consider, okay, if you're bringing on, this person did say, we're about to launch a rebrand exercise. So we don't know, let me look here, all the different backgrounds, the color. We don't know from this question if an agency has been hired or outsiders have already been hired. But that is then another reason to look at that agency and go, okay, wait a second, what's that breakdown of that agency? How do they look and function? Are there any people there that are our audience that we're going for? So let's just say, and I don't know what the situation is here with the fintech, but let's just say, hey, if you're going after older Americans, baby boomers who are retiring soon, you're doing a retirement platform. Well, if it's a bunch of millennials designing something, yeah, right? So you kind of have to think and go, it'd be the same thing as if you hired an agency with people in their 60s saying, hey, we're doing something for Gen Z. What do you think? So that's an age type of perspective, but there's multiple views of this. So that would be my further advice for this person is whomever externally you're using, let's say if it's an agency, in addition to what you're mentioning, Victoria, of the experts who are coming from a wider cultural lens, is to look at that agency and go like, well, what do they have there? And are they representing and part of who we're trying to attract, to also not give us some BS answers too, and just go like, isn't it great? Isn't it great? That's how you get in dangerous situations like that Coke ad with Kendall Jenner at a protest. Horrifying, which I still think is not funny in a way, but like, how does that even get done level of funny?
Yes, exactly.
Yes. Victoria, those are all the questions we have for today. Thank you for being on. I very much encourage anyone listening, check out Rhia Ventures. They're doing fantastic work, very needed work. And by the way, listen to Victoria's podcast. You want to plug anything, Victoria?
Sure. Our podcast is PS Blossom, PS_Blossom on Twitter, Instagram, Facebook. And you can follow us and see the conversations that we're going to be having in the future and that we've had. We just had a really exciting conversation talking about California's eugenics law. So,
oh, wow. Yeah. Hop on there, everybody. Hop on there. Thank you again, Victoria. It's been great chatting with you.
Thank you again, Beck. I really appreciate it.
Thanks for listening to Dear BAMf, the advice podcast for PR and marketing pros like you. Our show was created by BAM, a PR and marketing agency headquartered in San Diego and New York City. The music you're enjoying today was composed by Tiffany Dizon, produced by Daniel Kessner, and played by San Diego Symphony's Art of Valon. If you have a tough PR and marketing question you'd like us to answer, write to us at bamtheagency.com/Dear BAMf. Don't forget the F. If you'd like to get notified of our latest episodes, subscribe to us wherever you listen to podcasts and review us on Spotify and Apple Podcasts.